Shabbat Shalom. May we rejoice together in Holy Shekinah, in divine enlightened presence this day, in the good company of one another, in anointed community, and good company of powers of heaven and spirits of Tzaddikim, in great luminous assembly, resting in Eternal One, resting and risen, ascended Mashiach. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So let us take this moment to be deep inward, in a calm abiding, resting in the Lord in our heart, the supernal Son of the Supreme, aware of this light, enshrouding us, surrounding us on all sides, holding the intention in our heart of the Holy Spirit wearing this light, wearing this fire, going out into all directions of endless space, touching and blessing all living beings, all living spirits and souls, in this dimension and inner dimensions, throughout the entire great matrix of co-arising, holding this intention as we invoke hey, 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 Kalamasiya Ashara, Kalamasiya Ashara, Kalamasiya Ashara, Kalamasiya Ashara, Kalamasiya Ashara, Yodonai, 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 So let it be. Amen. I want to speak with you about holy secrets. Essential secrets, which are only secret because most don't notice. Most are not aware. I want to speak to you about the essential primordial elements of consciousness, the power of these, the arising of these, which is to speak deeply regarding the intrinsic nature of mind, consciousness, soul. But as I do, I would ask you not to so much try to know or understand something by thought, thinking, and figuring it out, but to let your heart be open and spacious, be in the sense of feeling, and the intuitive intelligence of your heart, the wisdom of your heart, to see, hear, feel in this way, and see what insights, see what illuminations come. Just being inward, open, relaxed, playful. So in the Kabbalah of Melchizedek, which is, in most secret teachings, our Gnostic Christian Kabbalah, there is this recounting of the Great Vision of Melchizedek, which is alluding to, hinting at the experience of being in the natural state, the experience of emerging into conscious enlightenment, awakened enlightenment. And so, as it is taught, and as it has been witnessed and realized over generations by Gnostic masters and Gnostics in the secret, and abiding in the immeasurable space of luminous transparency, spacious radiant awareness, non-dual Gnostic awareness, the clear and perfect light. Spontaneously in the resting, there's the arising of sound vibration. This natural and spontaneous, all-pervading intonement of the name. Yahweh, Yahushua. From the sound vibration, then arise 5 essential lights in 5 colors. The arising of the essential primordial elements of consciousness, of mind, consciousness, soul, in innate purity. From these is seen, streaming, radiating light in the display of the colors, all interacting and interweaving in a formation of geometrical patterns, filling the immeasurable, endless space beyond thought, beyond time, beyond karma. Light continue. And these, in turn, generate light structures, light palaces, light realms, pure light lands, and divine enlightened self-radiant entities in this vast display of supernal glory, radiance of the primordial reality. All of this, and arising of primordial elements in their innate purity, with no gross element, only most subtle and sublime. And the radiance and radiant display, this brilliant, translucent light, rainbow light, in a manner of speaking. These elements inseparable from their secret essences, or more truly put, secret essence, which is the clear and perfect light. Now through sound vibration, raying out like through prism. So this, my friends, a natural and spontaneous arising in great perfection, in truth of Melchizedek, Messiah, from a threefold body, a body of truth. The clear and perfect light, the radiant nothingness, luminous emptiness, and so a body of glory, supernal glory, and body of pure emanation, pure manifestation, no gross elements. All in non-dual truth, all in unity. Awareness inseparable from emptiness, bliss inseparable from emptiness, all divine enlightened qualities inseparable from emptiness, radiance of this emptiness, this beingness, this suchness. And so it is. So this speaks something of this movement. It said that anywhere that this happens in any world system, at any point in space-time, all of the holy, divine, enlightened ones of the beginningless past, endless future, and immeasurable simultaneous present are in that place, inside and surrounding that one on all sides. And so, quite a wave of this joy and this peace and waves of this light and gnosis transmission. Quite something. So, of course, reality of absolute, world of emanation in Kabbalah, or universe of secrets, so-called, yeah. And of course, whatever isn't these words, is beyond mental conception. Just saying. And it just is. Completely natural and spontaneous and arising. And everything in itself liberates as it arises. No attachment, no aversion. No ego grasping. No play, desire, or fear. Desire without subject, without object. Hence the great bliss. Yeah. But this is not exactly where beings begin when they first arise from primordial reality, the primordial unity. No, the arising of living beings, sentient beings, mind, conscious, soul streams, is from an unconscious unity. See? And it's very similar to the phenomenon, matter of fact, directly parallel, really, of your experience of dreamless sleep, which very few here actually are ever lucid in dreamless sleep or remember dreamless sleep. It's kind of a blank, unconscious unity. But then, arise in dreams, unaware, sleeping, and dreaming. And in effect, experiencing self, the dream world, others in dream world, as separate and apart. And yes, in a long-standing habitual unconscious habit of belief in solid, substantial, independent self-existence of things. Sort of like that. But this happens through countless incarnations for a good while. For mind, conscious, soul streams, there is this ignorance, this illusion of separation, which gives a rise to that self-will, self-grasping, delusion of substantial self-existence, and delusion of lack. This is the arising in Peyrud, separation, versus Yehud, unity. Yehud, meaning Adam Kadmon, primordial reality, absolute, arising from it, as in Great Vision. Peyrud, Bariya Yetzira Asiya, which means spiritual dimensions universe, astral dimensions universe, material dimension universe. And what occurs in this unconscious arising with living beings is a separation is made in these essential elements, so that there's a rising of subtle and gross element. And they're more or less divided. So all of a sudden there's this arising of the elements of consciousness in impurity, more and more and more. Or in greater separation, with an increase of the self-grasping and. And this produces the arising of mind, conscious, soul in all of these different relative realities. Now, to explain one of the things that is known in the process of spiritual into supernal realization, and known deeper and deeper and deeper, is how everything, all reality of our experience, essentially occurs in our own mind, consciousness, soul. And how everything arising, in fact, is a magical, radiant display of the energy of our mind, consciousness, soul. Hence, the realities of our experience, even at a material level. And actually, in saying this, what Gnostic masters would be saying is, oh, yes, the arising of the energy of the essential elements of mind, consciousness, soul. Because understand, just as in the Great Vision, everything is actually woven of these essential primordial elements of consciousness. Everything. From supernal to spiritual to astral to material. And so all these realities. and so, of course, the common phrase from Gnostic masters of all reality being dreamlike. Now, that example of ordinary dream, where you're in the dream, it's kind of like waking consciousness for you, where there's you, there's the environment around you, and everybody else in the world. Separate. But what about an awakened dreamer, fully awake? Aware that it's illusory, dream, and empty of any inherent substantial self-existence, and actually a unified field of energy, inseparable from mind, consciousness, soul. Magical, radiant display of mind, consciousness, soul. The power of the elements of mind, consciousness, soul. Oh. In that state of ordinary dream, you would have a division of subtle and gross element. And subtle element could be completely concealed with a complete orientation to gross. Gross being the appearance in that relative reality of dream of you, everything else and everyone else arising, and this outwardness. See, this is the thing. In the ignorance, beings tend to get completely oriented to gross arising of elements, outwardness, and things outside, and all that self-will, self-grasping. The desire energy, the manifesting energy, gets directed downward and outward, not inward and upward. And subtle elements get very imbalanced, get weakened, get diminished, because this whole outward orientation, and here becomes the play of Perud, and the unenlightened condition, and the Gilgalim, you see. And it's all in this play of various combinations and various states of purity to impurity of these elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. If hearing this, you would understand something that's kind of funny with some genre of occultists ceremony magicians, so on, who get fixated thinking, planetary magic is superior to elemental magic. Of course, if they're talking about nature spirits, like, okay, yeah, I guess. The only thing is, but the underpinning power and weave of everything is these 5 essential elements, these primordial elements. So like planets, stars, everything, all beings, divine enlightened beings too. Feeling that there's something very powerful in beginning to become aware of this deeper meaning of the energy of mind, consciousness, soul, and its manifesting power. In reality and truth, subtle, gross, secret, have actually never been separate. They're actually inseparable and cannot be separate and are completely interconnected. But in the illusion of separation, relative realities of such arise and become very real for living beings. And beings get bound up in them, unaware of the power to transform, unaware of the power to extract oneself. If you're feeling. So the knowledge starts becoming interesting, because the entire way of transformation, which is Bulk Gnostic path, becomes all about a progressive purification of the essential elements. And this luminous energy in these various modes. Beginning with the fact, just learning to deeply engage calm abiding, and be deeper still to the witnessing, this in itself, to be able to rest in a relaxed, open, spacious mind, consciousness, inward, deeply inward, in itself, begins to purify the elements of consciousness and balance them. Also, in karma, the gross elements become very strong and dominant, while subtle elements tend to get weakened and diminished. And of course, with this inwardness, the subtle elements are increased and grow stronger and stronger. And this balance in consciousness of inside-outside begins to naturally rectify just in that deep prayer, that deep meditation, just being inward. Let alone the various other practices that may be taken up in the way of transformation, such as union with partzufim, divine enlightened personifications, where envisioning being in light body. Because when we start talking about these primordial elements, obviously we're starting to talk deeply about subtle body of consciousness. And so light body. And beginning to identify with the truth of the elements, their secret. All of a sudden, a further and further balancing, purification, harmonizing of these elements. Also various modes of breathing, breath, the radiant holy breath, and moving the radiant holy breath inside the body. Also, intonement, invocation, sacred chant, and sound vibration, and moving this radiant holy breath and moving power of these essential elements of consciousness. Of course, various moments of light and gnosis transmission, which elevate in stations and states of soul and assist in clarifying, as well as the further recognition, empowerment that allows yet deeper prayer, yet deeper meditation oneself. In union with these partzufim, so the full-on practice of the seal, where one's really engaging in a remembrance and perception of everyone and everything as this illusory light display, the awareness of all as this pure radiance of emptiness, nothingness. Which is everythingness. And all sound vibration, the word of the partzuf, voice of the partzuf, and transmission. All thoughts arising, a radiant wisdom display of that enlightened mind of partzuf, one's own mind. If you're feeling me. And it goes and goes and goes in ways. A traditional invocation of sacred circle is very interesting in this way. Where it goes from the east, and it's an unfolding of space into air, fire, water, earth, from most subtle sublime to least in elements. And it can be done sunwise, clockwise, which is invoking and manifesting. Can be done the other way, which is in dissolution, and it gets very interesting, the experience. Because in the midst of this, there's this invocation of holy, divine, enlightened beings, archangels. And there's 6 of them, but 2 are 1, so the 5. And guess what? It happens to be direct personifications of the powers of these 5 essential elements of one's own mind, consciousness, soul, is what the display is. Metatron mainly, space, unfolding of space. Raphael, air. Michael, fire. Gabriel, water. Orchiel, Yochiel, the earth. And how funny with earth, light of God. Oh, the self-radiant nature of everything. even the seemingly most dense. So yes, here's this play, and I can share with you, it's like I was writing recently, from a Gnostic perspective, there's no such thing as a miracle or a wonder. By the way, it's all a magical display. And no, I don't mean in a way of an occultist by any means. You see, the problem with the way of thinking, a miracle, a wonder, we may play with the words, but our meaning in behind, in oneness. Because oftentimes, in an eternalist view, and typical religious view, it's meaning some supreme being separate and apart from us. And it's called supernatural. But that's sheer ignorance of reality as it is. Because if it's dreamlike, you tell me, in a lucid dreamer in a lucid dream walking through a wall, is that supernatural? That's natural. They happen to know the illusory nature of it and the radiant display of their own mind, and there they go. Or fly. Or open a portal of light. Or lay light hands on someone for blessing and healing, or miracle, wonder. Only to one asleep and dreaming. To one awake? Magical. It's a magical, radiant display. If you're feeling me. And it's natural. It's merely knowing the true nature of what's arising and appearing. And letting it be just that. Talk about some arising and realization of accomplishments or psychic magic powers. All natural, though. In it, wow, because, this divine light nature is the intrinsic nature of your mind, consciousness, soul. So all of this is actually inside you. As we Gnostics really always love saying, maybe Yeshua was never trying to prove anything or say anything about himself, but reflect us to us. Reflect the truth of our origin and this natural state to us. And show us the truth of its embodiment, its full realization. Kind of like, very lucid dreamer dancing around in Shekinah in a collective dream with all intention of awakening, he and Magdala. Yes, Gnostic view, very much so, my friends. And granted, this is an introduction, the contemplation, obviously, of essential elements. Well, it's quite essential and can run very deep and get quite layered. But perhaps a start of a stirring for discussion, contemplation, sharing of insights, so on. Enough for me, though, for this day, for this moment. May the fullness of supernal grace, streaming blessings, empowerments for your realization and peace be upon you. And in the Supreme, may there be an increasing and preserving of your secret, your realization. My love to you, my friends. Deep and abiding love. Shalom.
this all as a dream-like reality. Quite liberating. Transforming indeed. What are your thoughts? How is this stirring you? What are you feeling?
I'm so struck by this discussion of kind of the interrelation and interplay between gross and subtle elements. And I was hearing not such a strong separation between them like I had in the past, but kind of like two sides of the same coin kind of a thing. And I was really remembering this dream that Elder Gideon had shared many years ago, where I believe please correct me if I'm wrong, Gideon, but I believe you were in an airport and there was these big, strong archons, and you knew that you would be stopped by them. Like you were going somewhere very important and you'd be stopped by them, but they couldn't see you. So, because they couldn't see you, you could pass. And this relates to a really intense experience this week where I was dealing with some very, very negative energies at work and some very intense personalities. And I had to navigate that. And as I was praying about it, God really showed you have Teflon if you don't take yourself seriously and if you don't have your ego wrapped up in it. But as soon as you make a story out of this, and as soon as I try to get high and mighty and, as soon as my ego is in it, I don't have that Teflon anymore and I don't have that protection. And just such a strong teaching of this Teflon that we can put on in the spirit.
I really like the Teflon image because it really reminds, we were circling this a little bit last week of the dance of the Shekinah and how, easy to kind of smoothly move aside or be out of the way or not be seen in dance. In fact, that's what makes dance so beautiful, is these steps and moves that you won't even expect, that's constantly this drawing close and this steering and very playful in a sense. And so I hear the ability you're drawing out to wear the Teflon and not stick must have something to do with the malleability and fluidity that's being represented, as you're saying, in how elements can arise more subtly and not be, because consider gross in the sense of we can, just in a really earthly material experience, water can become solid and all of a sudden it's ice. And it's really hard to move through ice. It's solid. Yet, in a more subtle form, water's water, fluid. Now, not saying that it doesn't have its force. It surely does. Got a hurricane or a torrential downpour. Yeah. A flood. Yeah. But then now consider water in its most subtle form, gaseous. And so in the same way, there's a lot more Teflon associated with the gaseous manifestation. And we just using water, but we can imagine this is true for all of the elements in different ways. And I also appreciate you sharing how two sides of the same coin, subtle, gross. That's a deep meditation, actually. Very deep. A good one to be with, carrying out this mystery.
I'm wondering whether hearing Sister Marin's point about two sides of the same coin, whether what we're hearing here is our relationship with Shekinah. So when the elements manifest or we perceive them purely in their gross forms, our relationship with Shekinah is as nukva, where we just see the world as it appears. And as those subtle elements become revealed, or our vision, our experience becomes purified, then maybe that's when nukva becomes bat, and we experience not just asiya, but yetzirah. And then as that continues, then kala is unveiled in the purity. And then when we experience the subtle and the gross as one, then with the fullness of the Holy Spirit, we experience the unity of Yehud. So therefore, mother and daughter, interior and exterior, are perceived in their innate unity. So the two sides of so rather than two sides of the same coin, we perceive the coin.
Yes, brother. Liking that a lot. Because the truth of this arising, as was drawn out in the discourse, is the great natural perfection. And it just is. And yes, the arising, our relationship with Shekinah, and in a sense, we can hear reality as it is. God is God is this dance of Shekinah. Has everything to do with how these are being perceived and how that perception is within and behind our own arising. And I would agree with you, from nukva to bat to kala, this relationship that is bringing a return of the non-dual Gnostic awareness, which I heard you draw out with the coin itself. Non-dual, not this and that, not one way or the other, which really starts to condense and solidify things here. And the inside and the outside, day and night, and male and female, and all of these polarities we can get stuck in. That is exactly what produces the arising of the Gilgalim and the endless movements of the karmic arising, life, death, and rebirth. So, and I mean, we don't talk about it much, but it's very much there in our Kabbalah. There's even more dense, you could say, manifestations of Shekinah, where we're going into Lilith, Neama, Egeret. And so that whole spectrum is, in a sense, relaying how this reality display is arising in a myriad. Because you have gradations within all of those gradations. It's really curious. And it's curious to just abide with the meditation here that no two beings can ever be perceiving the same reality. It's really wild. And then we go here trying to communicate with one another. No wonder communication is so difficult, right? Because we're existing in this myriad of unfathomably endless gradations of this exact relationship you're speaking. Ooh, it's pretty wild.
I really appreciate your sharing what you shared, because I feel like we were both kind of going through a lot of the same thing this week. And so how you explain that, I feel that so much. And I'm also wondering, Tal Sarah, speaking of magic instead of miracles, I'm also thinking of how we all have those periods where we just feel, the word is synchronicity, or has been synchronicity, but I'm almost feeling like those times are more magical than synchronicity, because we're putting thoughts out sometimes to other people or about other people, and it seems like our thoughts do come back to us, like when we get a call from that person, and to me, that's not synchronicity. That's really more magical, I feel.
Indeed, dear sister. And actually, I do want to marvel. There must have been an empowerment of sorts, because I feel you two had a very similar experience as well in the sharing. And I appreciate the sharing. That's an empowerment, and that you can share it. It's an empowerment in community for all of us. And this piece that you're drawing out, a mystic will often, relate with a reality display, in that there are no coincidences. You'll hear Tal Malachi say this often. I don't believe in coincidence. There is no coincidence, which gets into that word synchronicity that you're drawing out. And in fact, magical, yes, it's a beautiful word, because what it does is it brings back to that playful quality. When that happens and you happen to be thinking of somebody and literally in that moment they call, that always brings a really big smile, because there's a recognition of the direct interconnectedness happening here. And that mind thought might not be so isolate to us. And it is this very magical reality arising moment to moment, day to day. I've shared this so many times. I remember after getting to witness a baby being born for the first time, and how miraculously magical this experience was. Like, literally, I watched myself not be able to see the actual birth of the baby because it was too flabbergasting to the mind. It was kind of like a moment of light transmission when, like, appearance and disappearance is happening, because all of a sudden there's this body that magically appeared seemingly out of nowhere. And then taking that magical consciousness from that moment, walked for a few days where you could see everything as magical. The cup of coffee that you would get at the the morning coffee spot being handed to you, magically appearing, all of these things just so magical, everything, because it's all a co-arising of the universe in that cup of coffee. We were getting into this a bit last week. Magical. And suppose if we're in that consciousness, I hear where Malachi said there's no wonders, in the sense of it's what's supernatural. It's all supernatural. It's all wondrous. So yes, appreciate that.
Something about what's been shared reminds me of, I recall, I think it was probably early 2000s, and there was a radio program, and they were interviewing, and at the time, a large Buddhist statue that had been in existence for many, many years had just been destroyed by sort of an up-and-coming kind of radical government at the time that was blowing up anything that was sort of like not anything that was an image of another divine. And I remember I think very cleverly, the host sort of, they had someone to kind of respond to this from who was related in the organization sort of near the statue. And they said something, well, like, what's your take on this, awesomely, huge and beautiful statue of the Buddha being destroyed? And he says something like, well, yeah, that impermanence, like, that's the point. Like, and what I like that had stuck with me ever since I heard that is it kind of gets at the idea that the gross manifestations of consciousness elements don't negate the subtle ones, even if they are louder than them. It's kind of like if there's a place of really loud sounds happening, almost like cymbals or, crashing metal or something. It doesn't negate silence. Silence is still there. It's just like a different layer upon it.
Indeed, brother. And this teaching you're sharing is so important, because it actually begins to get into, while we can come to this recognition that these bodies and this life is completely impermanent, it doesn't negate it. In fact, if one really comes into that deep awareness, one will also recognize the precious, rare, priceless gift of this body and this life. And so one does not negate the other by any means. It goes with the teaching of how the greater, the more consciousness comes into the body, the more consciousness expands beyond body. So it's both simultaneously. And, you're sharing of the loud kind of motion of the very large statue coming down and being destroyed, and then the impermanence within it all the while. That I flashed on experience once where I used to work up in the mountains and was working for the transportation system in the state of California, and was standing in the middle of the road doing traffic control overlooking Lake Tahoe. And there was a hustle bustle of traffic and diesel exhaust and all of this, and was like, how can I enjoy this beauty standing in the midst of this seeming chaos and destruction in the environment and everything else. And a similar experience, as I prayed with it more and more, eventually the Shekinah came to say, nothing about this place has ever been changed and cannot be changed. It's sacred as it is. And was so powerful because what it started to say was this sacred space, power zone, literal power zone in the earth can't be tainted no matter what human beings do to it. Now, there are some instances where, yes, I've also experienced where the opposite has been true. Yet, what power to see that silence, to come to that silence within and behind what's happening. And with that in mind, brother, you'll want to deeply visit how Malachi's writing, I believe yesterday. He goes into this deep discussion. That's a new divine name that's shared. He talks about Ani Yahweh and Ani Adonai and Ein Yahweh and Ein Adonai with this exact teaching within and behind it of how the unbroken lineage of light and gnosis transmission moves untouched, the order of Melchizedek, without end, but in a mystery touches down here. And the touching down is exactly that priceless treasure of materiality and how things come to be physical here, but has touched down and not touched down. Simultaneous. It's quite a lovely teaching. I hear it in your words here.
I wanted to share a story about the play and the elements. When my son was little, he liked those. They're like action figure dolls, but they're bigger, and they would really disturb me. He'd have 20, 40 of them, and they looked kind of like demonic and dark. I just didn't like them, right? So he used to play with them in the bath. And one day I took one and I was like, I'm gonna turn this around. And I just turned it around, and I felt like in my little mind, I was playing with it. I'm like, I'm gonna get all the yuckies out of this doll. And I turned it around, and it was on his head, and it was doing this handstand, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so much better. I don't feel that dark energy from it anymore. It's just turned around now, and now it's like a toy, and it's on his head, and the water's cleaning it. And I just kind of went through and did it to all of them. And then after I did that with those toys, that one day, they didn't bother me anymore. It was just over. My little mental thing of these are dark or whatever. And when I did it, I was like, I'm getting it all out, for everyone, on the planet. These toys, they're not going to do this to anyone anymore. It was just it was almost like a little ceremony that I did. But it was so funny. And I always think of that now when really bad things are kind of going on in my life, or what could perceived as being so dark and heavy and bad, and it's just oh yeah, remember that Spider-Man doll? He just flipped it around and it was gone. I'll always kind of think that little thing. And it was just so fun and playful, but it really was strong medicine that helped a lot. And I wanted to share one other thing about the elements thing. When I had mentoring with Sister Catherine, I asked her, I said, well, I want to try to find something that's like the Nipi ceremony, because I really miss it. And it's just so healing. And it's everything. And she started sharing with me like the dissolution of elements. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be like strong enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't, it's just so funny because I had never, done it before. And then when I started playing with it, meditating with it, and like just doing different things, I was like, oh, wow, it is like a purification of the soul. It is very bringing me back to base and, dissolving, stripping of the ego. So I've had like a really lot of fun playing with that. And it's just like, I'm only getting started, So it's like, wow, that's so exciting because it just could just keep going and going, So I just wanted to share that because it's been really powerful so far. And thanks for your stories, Marion and Elizabeth, because on Friday I got the CEO sent an email and he was very displeased. He was very displeased with one of the campaigns that one of my teams is running. And he said he was disappointed and he wanted to meet on Monday about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am not looking forward to this meeting. But I kept remembering that childlike play of it. Obviously, I'm going to take it seriously and be prepared and things like that. I'm not just going to like and like laugh about it. But at the same time, I liked hearing your stories because I'm like, oh yeah, you gotta get out of the ego and you gotta. That's the Teflon, right? It's not about the ego. It's about I've got to be humble. I've got to be humble. So maybe I'll think of the doll being upside down and like flip it upside down or flip myself upside down, right? Because it's like I've just got to let it go, right? And at the same time, like, don't worry, I'm not gonna like go in there and like laugh at them or anything like that. But it's just a good lesson. So thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for letting me share that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate the turning the Spider-Man upside down and cleaning and essentially turning fear upside down, inside out. And that connects deeply with your sharing of the dissolution of elements, because that dissolution at the same time is a purification of the elements. And then, Malachi talked about this arising of the Great Vision today, which this is not a vision to be had like we think of vision, but it is expressing a deep awareness of the arising of purity constantly without end. And that nothing can ever be stuck as it appears to be. And in that great vision, the elements are in their essential form. Formless, hard to talk about form and formlessness there, but are made pure. And what that is has something very much to do with that Teflon that Sister Marion was drawing out earlier. And the same of the turning the scary doll upside down. It's an ability, like Tal Malachi was also drawing out, to arise lucid in the dream. And in perhaps glimpse something of dreamless sleep, which within and behind all arising. Yes, taking something of this into that meeting will be very important, dear sister. I think it will change. And another thing too is we take ourselves so serious here. Sometimes coming in light-hearted, compassionate, open, willing to listen and hear without the ego involved, has this power to dissolve control, and has this great power to dissolve this illusion of separation, and somehow brings back to an ability to communicate in clarity. So holding that in prayer with you as you walk into this meeting on Monday morning. Yes, I suppose the Holy Spirit did have an empowerment in mind with this unfolding through you sisters today. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
I'm wondering if these elements are somehow related to our different bodies, like material body, etheric body, astral, like emotions, and mental body, like thoughts. And if I'm hearing actually this light of awareness, this awareness itself actually purifies and transforms emotions, thoughts, or even becoming aware of the light in our body. So I'm not sure if this is somehow related, these elements, with this material body, etheric, astral, mental. I'm wondering what is then space. So these are my thinking. Very interesting discussion.
That is a beautiful question. You know, we could say that I guess there's two different ways we could go at this. One is, yes, in a sense, I suppose there could be a manifestation of these moving through these dimensions of body as you're drawing out material into astral, spiritual, into supernal, as in a sense even plays out through the element. From gross to subtle elements and into spirit space. There is an angle of that comes up in different invocations of Sacred Circle. And there are a few different teachings on the forum that go into elements according to the directions in Sacred Circle. So yes. And at the same time, there's elemental arisings, all of them within each of these. So I don't mean to say and both, but that is sometimes where we'll go with things, because we don't want to pin it down too far this way or that. And what I mean by, there would be, you could say within, for example, the astral body, a need to come into a purification of elements, all of the elements within that body itself. Same moving into a spiritual body. There would still be this movement of purification of how these are arising within that body. So, it's kind of both. There is a writing you might appreciate. I will find it and send you the link. It is actually a beautiful meditation Tal Malachi wrote many years ago that goes into an invocation of the Sacred Circle, and it's kind of a banishing and invocation simultaneous, and it goes through the elements. And it goes into, he talks about the yesadot, or this purification, different attributes of what the purification of the elements might be connected to. For example, in the material, you're talking about an earth element, you're talking about lethargy and heaviness in body. And I believe in a water element, you're talking about purification of slander, gossip, different ways that we can engage in malicious speaking and such. And so it goes through these, and it actually explores this according to the Olamont and the elements. I can't remember the name, if anybody does, right off the top, but I will find it and send it to you. I think you'd appreciate it.
The Spirit had a very simple sentence for me regarding that being like a child, because I was like, what is it to be like a child? And then I was like we can say, who is really enlightened? Like, because this is like a display of separation. So who is really a child? Because that's kind of take all those concepts away from what it is to say a child, be a child, and gives a deeper like access to that pure form there. And when Sadiq talked about today, where he talked about those pure elements and also the breath, I got this image of, like, we have that little small breath that we can use to even to isolate ourselves and create our self-identity, a self-grasping and sustain our ego. But then there's also and to me that's like what manifests the gross elements, or the elements in separation. But then there's that big breath that's not arising from us as a person, but something that breathing through us and through everything. And that is there where there is those pure elements. And the magic or the wonder happens when in ourselves we can start to combine those two, that we have that little circle and we have that infinite circle, and in that of the pure element that seeps into the elements in separation, there is that healing, not just for ourselves but for our community, or everything around us, because it is a remembrance what was already there and what always been there. So and I was even thinking the different stages of the I wasn't thinking, but it was like a sense I had, that the different stages of the when we're breathing has a connection to the different elements. And when the breath as a whole is that fifth element, that is the whole that brings it deeper. So I very appreciate Sadiq's sermon today. It was very inspiring. So thank you. You had something you wanted to say?
I think I'm just going to leave it
okay
where you're at for now.
Well, thank you. That's just what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Well, I hear you actually kind of circle something of Gregor's question and insight with this question of spirit space and what is space. Hence, the fifth element is starting to get into something of that. In Sacred Circle, this mystery comes up with the seventh direction which is the center, which is the one invoking. And I bring that up, those two correspondents, because, this place of spirit space, in a sense, the fifth element from which all is arising and all is dissolving, is similar to this breath you're talking about that is breathing us without end, because all is arising from this breath and all dissolving into this breath. And in a sense, if one really meditates deep on breath and into the gap between inhalation and exhalation, the gap, one might start to see it expand or experience an expansion of it to where arising and dissolution is like the arising of dream from dreamless sleep and dissolving back into dreamless sleep. Doesn't it start to get into macrocosm and microcosm? Doesn't it start to get into, Yeshua saying, I do what I see my Father doing, or even something like Brother Brandon was bringing up earlier of, this precious quality of this body and yet the impermanence of it all the while. This mystery is in Ein and Ani, very much so. And Ein and Ani are in a sense inseparable. I will leave that there. It's quite a mystery, and too many words are difficult here. Very much so.
I did want to share. I just wanted to let Lars have that space there because it seemed quite fast what he was going into. This Shabbat and Tal Malachi's teaching has definitely stirred something in me about the reality that impurity does not exist. And to recognize impurity, in a sense, without going deeper in to recognize that radiant emptiness, we're actually feeding the illusion of the impurity of separation. I think I'm saying this right. I'm doing my best. And I was just kind of thinking, wow, when we see something or feel something that may be recognized as an impurity, as I think it was Brother James or John who said it earlier, talking about how, when it comes down to the universe, as things are broken down, a little bit more impurity. But really, none of those things that look like impurities could exist without that radiant emptiness, which means there's a spark in there to be released. And it's kind of like when we recognize that impurity doesn't really exist, we're helping freeing that spark. And it was something I was contemplating that was coming to me the more I was contemplating this radiant emptiness that Tao was talking about today. And every time he started saying the word impurity, it was kind of dissolving because I was like, well, there is no purity in the radiant emptiness. It's more the fact of things. Impurity is an illusion that things are separate. That's kind of what I wanted to share anyways, where my contemplations were going. Thank you.
Indeed, dear sisters, to consider in gathering a cup of water from a mucky, muddy stream that's flowing very fast, and you put that cup of water, out, set, down on a solid ground and it appears impure. But it's not. The water has not been tainted. It's just there's an appearance of something in it that's causing it to look that way, because after a while, all of the impurities will settle. And what's pure is left. I think of what you're sharing. I think of the story of Jacob, really having to go through a vast cycle of purification to come back to face Esau. And in the facing of Esau, ultimately, begins to battle with this angel who ends up becoming this angel Peniel, who blesses him. What was once impure and a struggle and a strife in consciousness is no longer that for him. It has shifted. And there's a great power in that. And so bringing this, you could say, impure arising, as you're saying, uplifting the spark and returning it to what it truly is. That's what we're doing here. All of us through this life. Engaging in these purifications. I liked how Elijah saying the entire path is a path of purification. And it's true. In experience, we can experience that and know, oh yeah. So the minute you think you've purified one thing, here comes that next thing, or a more subtle form of that. It's like, wow, I didn't see this one coming. It's even more subtle and more subtle and more subtle. But that's the beauty. Somehow we're not doing it either. The Shekinah is.
I'll be brief. The thing that just came out to me as Tao was speaking today was in the Gospel of Thomas, the disciples ask when the kingdom of heaven is going to appear, and Yeshua tells them it's not going to be look here or look there. It's the kingdom of heaven's laid out upon the earth, but men don't have eyes to see it. And this kind of relates to the wonder of the eyes of a child, but I'm seeing it as the eyes of faith. Just looking at little David down there and just seeing him kind of smiling with wonder. And that's how we see the world, through the eyes of faith, in the power and the healing power of faith. Faith is a mustard seed, that this tiny little seed has the power to move mountains. And what happens when that seed matures? So that's what came out to me today.
Thank you, brother. That's beautiful. The power of faith. That's that magic we're speaking. And where is this kingdom? Certainly can't be outside. Certainly can't be there or there. No. I suppose the purification is coming to that true, natural, spontaneous arising of faith that is natural to us. And once it gets in, it's insidious. irreversible, like that mustard seed getting into a field. And it goes and it goes and it grows into a big mustard, huge tree, if you will, and is unstoppable. And that's the beauty of faith. Yes, thank you. I am thinking a probably good place to press the pause button here. It's been quite a swirl. Lovely inspirations and sharings, everyone. Quite a beautiful dance. Let us hold this gathering and the energy generated deep in heart, praying for the expanse of true liberation, praying for freedom, the awareness of impermanence, the coming into being of true lucidity, arising in the hearts and the minds and the lives of countless beings and souls. May many return and abide in the mercy and compassion, the pure grace of the Blessed Holy One. And may many walk in this inspiration, bringing hope, bringing the truth of faith in love as a message to all living beings and souls. My love to you. Zachor Shalom.
Remember peace.
Remember
Remember
peace.
peace.
Remember peace.
Remember peace.
Remember peace.